now that we are recording, Hayley, I'll let you sign in. I would like to officially and formally present you all to our body wellness, holistic wellness, body intuitive, flexibility, breathing.
Did you plan this beforehand?
Yes, I did. Wellness events. Yeah, the assignment was 50 words. Featuring our very own Hayley Currin. One of our esteemed soloists for Synergy Musicians Collective. Hayley will be presenting on many things. Your personal story, a little bit, I'm sure, and some performance and practice. Always good to have good practice. Body, wellness, the whole shebang. I know you love this, right? And so this is going to be really fun, and I hope that people can come and watch this back in history and time through all times and spaces. But yeah, I'll let her take it away. And in fact, I'll do the screen share so that when we can, and then do it full screen so that people can go back and watch this.
Or maybe you won't screen share.
I don't know if anything matters. But,
Sure, well,
oh, wait. Gotta make sure that we allow.
This was very clearly laid beforehand.
Okay, you know what? That's okay. We'll share this presentation with you guys on the or something.
You put it like a presentation. I personally think that wellness is one of the most important parts of being a musician. I'm kind of disappointed that it's not centralized in our practices more. I believe that we all benefit from it. So some of you know and some of you don't that 2 years ago, probably exactly today, I was in Smaz's office telling him that I needed to take 2 weeks off right before Christmas Fest because I couldn't play anymore. It started on tour. I was excited. I was excited as a freshman to be a performance major. And I took, when they said to practice 3 hours a day, I took it as gospel. I practiced 3 hours every day, no matter the cost. And I didn't factor in how much I was playing for work, how much I was playing for orchestra, how much I was playing in chamber music. And when I actually added it all up, I was playing probably around 8 hours a day, every day of the week for 3 months. So when I came to tour, I've been feeling some like weird sensations in my wrist. Whenever I like brushed my hand down, it kind of felt like there was a burning sensation there, but it was just a little bit, so I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to think about what would come next. And then on tour, we played Mahler Symphony 1 9 times in 9 days. And by the time I had finished with the tour, it was hard to ignore. A couple weeks later, I was taking absurd amounts of ibuprofen. I reached the point where I couldn't practice for more than 10 minutes at a time. It didn't stop me from practicing 3 hours a day. And by the family concert, that day I had 14 hours of playing. I had 2 dress rehearsals, 2 concerts, and a 2-hour-long quartet rehearsal. I took 4 times the daily dose of ibuprofen. and I was still crying when I was playing. By the time I went to physical therapy, my wrist was at 0% mobility. And I was told that it would be unlikely if I would ever be able to play more than 30 minutes at a time, ever again. For the rest of my life, in 3 months. So since that point, I spent more money on physical therapy than I do on tuition. I did a 3-month-long program with someone I'll be talking about a lot later called the Functional Musician. He's a DMA student at the Jacobs School of Music right now, who has been through like re-injury cycles and decided to like help other musicians out. I went through who knows how much pain medication. I took 2 weeks off. I stopped liking music for a while because my body was literally afraid to be in this building. And then I proceeded to deal with flare-ups until probably about 2 months ago. A couple of days ago, a couple of you might have seen this on my Instagram story, but Peabody Music Conservatory came out with a study that says 8 out of 10 musicians will suffer a performance injury in their lifetime. Out of those 8, 5 will deal with flare-ups for the rest of their lives. 1 will completely leave the field, and 2 will recover. And 2 years ago, I would have put money on myself as the one that would have to leave the field. And instead, I'm one of the 2 that recovers. And I want to help people not go through what I did. I want to save some people some of the time, some of the money, some of the pain that I had. So I hope that this is just the beginning, if it is the beginning, or maybe a continuance of whatever wellness journey you have for yourselves. But performers are essentially athletes, and please take care of yourselves. Like basics about like just general wellness and how that pertains to the practice room. So like I made a pun because we're musicians, but there's a couple of cues that we're all missing. We were taught at a very young age the act of discipline. As musicians, it is like one of the most prized things. We're prized as children that can be disciplined, that can sit for long periods of time focused, that can do long amounts of things, that like, and eventually that becomes, well, today I practiced like 6 hours, or today I was too busy to get lunch, or, and everyone thinks that's awesome because you're really doing the most, except you're really just hurting yourself. So one of the hardest parts about any drinking wellness is getting back those cues. The sleeping when you're tired, which sounds really simple, but it's not when you have so much homework. The eating when you're hungry, which also doesn't sound hard, but you'd be surprised, because that kind of goes away, like even with meal times. Like meal times get rid of our hunger cues in the first place. So as musicians, that gets even worse, because what meal times? What time to sleep? And we need to make time for it, because the more we ignore these cues, the more burnt out we feel, the more at risk for injury we are, the more mentally unstable we are. And also, so for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about a lot of things. I'm going to be covering a lot of material for an hour, a lot of lifestyle changes that you may or may not do already. I'm not asking you to go out and turn your life around tomorrow. I'm hoping that you take one thing from this presentation and say, all right, tonight I will make sure that I get 7 hours of sleep at least. Or I think I'll try stretching tomorrow. Like, and then if you really feel inclined, then continue adding things when you feel comfortable with them. But speaking of burnout, if you decide to go all in on everything wellness, you're going to realize it takes a lot of your time and you're not going to want to do it. So do it gradually. All right, so nutrition. it's a little hard when the only food we have is from the cafeteria to like constantly honor your hunger cues or to honor like whatever you want to eat. It is sometimes hard to have a healthy, balanced diet because you're kind of at the whim of whatever Bona decides for that day. But do as much as you can to like deal with your own hunger. So personally, I'm a huge proponent of intuitive eating. I'm also an eating disorder recovery right now, and intuitive eating is an anti-diet plan because it involves not restricting. So it's also really solid for anyone, whether or not you struggle with like disordered eating or not. It is good to think of like, what does my body want right now, more than, well, the cat has this awesome cheesecake today, so I'm gonna have 8 pieces. Like, if you make yourself feel sick by eating something, then maybe like, don't. Like, but also don't cut things out. So like, I own that book, Intuitive Eating. If that is something that interests you, you are welcome to borrow it from me at any point in time. The other thing is like, take the time to eat. Your meal times are not free real estate. Stop scheduling rehearsals in them. Because I know that I used to do that all the time. I'd look at my schedule and there was a gap there. So I thought, well, there's nothing scheduled there except it was the only time of the day I had to eat. And it just gives you an excuse to ignore it. So like I actually learned this from Grace, that she schedules in like self-care into her very extensive Google Calendar. So I put lunch and dinner into my Google Calendar. That way I am constantly reminded that it is not something I can just surpass. So like make it an actual part of your day that has value. You don't have free time, you're not wasting your time, you are taking care of yourself. And the same goes for like working out or for rest. You can schedule it in. If you're as neurotic about schedules as I am, then you need to make sure that there is that space in your brain that will allow you to do that.
I will say, I schedule stuff in as if it were a class sometimes to make myself do it.
And what does nutrition look like for the practice room? So I don't know about you, but I had a practice session. And I was grumpy every single time I had to walk into that room for like a month at 3:30 p.m. And I didn't realize that it was because I just wanted a snack. So you need energy in order to practice. And that involves having food. If that means bringing a snack, that's great. If that means having like set meal times before practice sessions, that's great. Like practicing on this empty stomach is never going to be great for you. The same goes with hydration. If your hand cramps up a lot when you practice, it might be your technique. It might also be because you're dehydrated, which is something I never really considered. But it's true because like there's more tension if you don't have enough liquids in your body. All right, then sleep, which is probably the hardest one for college students. It's hard. We have a lot of things to do. I don't know about all of you, but I operated with an 18, 19-hour schedule for 2 years, and now it's down to like 17. So I guess we can improve. But try to prioritize getting at least 7 hours of sleep. I'm not going to tell you like 9 to 11 or something. That's supposed to be for our age range. Find what works for you. 7 works for me. For some people, it is 10. If that's you, then like try scheduling for that. But no one can operate well off of like 4 to 5 hours of sleep for long periods of time. You can maybe do it for a couple of weeks, but if we're talking about burnout again, by this point in the semester, you are probably not feeling so great. Like, personally, I set homework limits. So no matter what I have to do, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm practicing, if I am doing homework, no matter what, it doesn't matter if it's done or not. I am done at midnight. And that is like, I can't promise your professors will understand, but your body will make you. And then that goes to the practice room too. The less sleep you have, the less focus you have. And then you leave the practice room feeling like angry at yourself for not being able to focus. You can stay in there for hours without getting anything done. The more exhausted your body is, the more your technique suffers, and the more at risk for injury you are. Right. Rest days. Like, I know a couple of us do this. Like, Lewis does not schedule anything on Thursdays.
Sure. Yeah.
I do not.
All of my self-care time. It's great.
Yes, I do not schedule anything on Saturdays besides a 1 hour hotel on the morning. And I have to. Like, it's imperative that you rest. Your muscles cannot recover unless you rest. Your brain will not recover unless you rest. And taking a designated rest day prevents you from calling other things like rest days, and it also prevents you from having to take long periods of time off. So, like, for a while there, I was like, oh, I only play like 4 hours today. It's my rest day. It's not. So if that's you, stop it. Also, if you don't take a rest day and then you find that you have zero motivation all the time, that like you keep taking random rest days, then it's also probably because you don't give yourself a designated time to rest and you need it. And then your sessions are not as productive. And it is true, you can be more productive and take a designated rest day, because then you won't feel tempted to take large periods of time off. Like at this time of the semester, I can pretty comfortably walk into any practice room and practice for any period of time, because no one really has the time or wants to practice anymore. It's late in the semester, everyone's tired, no one wants to do it. So by taking a rest day, you're gonna improve your endurance for the semester. For the practice room, that means taking practice breaks. I know several professionals that, like, every 45 minutes they take 15. There are those like big professionals that you're like, well, this person practices 8 hours a day. That's true. They don't do anything else but practice and take care of themselves. Like, I don't know if anyone really knows Johannes Moser. He's a cellist, but all he does all day is yoga and cello and swimming and cello and like eating and cello. Like, he takes care of himself and practices. So if you want to practice that much, then you have to accept the fact that your other entire part of your day has to be self-care, because your body can't do it without that. And we're Sonoma students, which means that we're not just capable of doing rest and instrument all day. So maybe like just be sure to take practice breaks and do not force yourself to that much time. If you do practice 3 hours a day, I know there's a couple of us in here that do, then make sure you're breaking it up. You can reserve, like, I know it's inconvenient to like go somewhere else and then come back to this building 5 million times during the day, but it can also help. Like, it helps your mental health. It helps your focus to go, I have 1 hour slot, and then I have like a class and lunch and something, and then another hour of music.
You do steps in too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also true that if you continue to like over practice, if you really are doing a 3 hour block of time, then your technique suffers by the end of it. And the more your technique suffers, the more ready you are for injury. All right, speaking of injury. So we need to start thinking of musicians more as athletes. If a runner were to tell you that they ran 8 hours a day, you would admit them to a psych ward immediately. And when a musician tells you they practice 8 hours a day, I don't know about you, but I get a little jealous. I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like someone's doing better than me. And like, I think about this with dancers. If dancers are dancing 6 hours a day, it's too much. So the same is true for you. You are moving your body the entire time you are playing an instrument. it is too much to go for that long. So think of yourself as an athlete in terms of endurance, do it in terms of nutrition, and also in terms of like working out and strength training. Because no one is running any amount of hours a day without also strength training and eating. So for musicians, the three most common types of injury are carpal tunnel syndrome, tendinitis, and bursitis. At least 76% of musicians will develop a performance injury in their lifetime. And an injury without common care can quickly become life-altering. It can become career-ending. At the very best, it can become a pain in your ass for the next many years of your life, because if you don't do the right preventative or preventative measures, it will not go away. So I have a bunch of things for injury prevention. And the main steps of injury prevention are stretching, mobility, proper technique, strength training, and rest. So intuitive movement. There's a lot of people that don't like working out, and that's fair. And that's also because they haven't found a kind of movement they like yet. If you don't like running, don't run. If you don't like lifting weights, don't lift weights. There are tons of forms of movement out there. If you like hiking, go for a hike. You don't have to force yourself to do something that you see as the proper exercise. Sophia and I used to have dance parties in our room. We call it exercise every day because it is. So, if you are struggling to encourage yourself to move your body during the day, then find something you like, no matter how light or how intense it is. It's better than nothing. Right, now we're going to go through some stretching do's and don'ts. So all of our bodies have different amounts of mobility in them. If you've never been injured before, you probably have a solid amount of mobility, but I seriously doubt, is there anyone in this room that doesn't experience tension at any point in their life? Really? So your mobility is not perfect, and that's why we work on it. But try to be aware of your mobility a little bit. Hyperextension is kind of dangerous if you have pain, if you have tension, and a lot of stretching puts you in positions like that. So, I know personally, as someone who's been injured for the longest time, the stretch that everyone tells you to do for your wrists is really bad for you. Because I don't know if anyone knows what carpal tunnel is, but we have a little tunnel in our wrist that holds our median nerve. And when you have carpal tunnel syndrome, that median nerve swells up, but the tunnel is not a muscle or anything, so it doesn't grow, which means eventually it's painful and your hand starts going numb. A diagnostic test for that is the stretch that most people tell you to do. So when they're wondering if you have carpal tunnel, they have this, and then this, and then this. And if you feel your hand go numb at any point, you might probably have some sort of nerve damage, which I do. But that's also what they tell you to do to stretch your wrists. My professors have told me that, my physical therapists, the bad ones I had before the good one, told me that you should always stretch like this for your wrist, but this is actually hyperextension. So whether or not you've ever had an injury, this isn't really helping you because this is a nerve, not a muscle. So when you do this, you're not really doing too much. I'll teach you a couple of wrist stretches that are better for you later. If you have a shoulder injury, then something like that is not very good for you because the likelihood that you can even lift your arm like that, not really there. So stretching is for flexibility. It isn't for mobility as much. Flexibility is important, but it also has its limitations for different bodies. So think about doing the sit and reach. Can you fold yourself all the way in half? Or can you make it to your knees like me? That's all about flexibility, but it's all different for different people. So stretches work that way too. If you have a shoulder injury, putting your arms over your head is probably not only difficult and painful, but a bad idea. If you have a wrist injury, this is probably a bad idea. But there are like other things to do that will, like, it does help relieve tension and stretch. That is true. You just have to be careful about what's good for you. All right, so mobility workouts. Yeah, that was hard. Still, but part of my functional musician program that I did was doing mobility workouts at least twice a day. I'm also supposed to do them before I practice. I do sometimes. But it helps you get your body more mobile in the morning, and at night that way you relieve tension before it begins to happen. So, like, it increases your range of motion is probably the best way to describe it. And when I mentioned earlier that I had zero mobility of my wrist, that meant that he asked me to tilt my wrist to the side and to the other side, and I couldn't. I couldn't move it at all. So that is what mobility is. It's how much you can lift your arms, how far your legs go out to the side. Everyone has different levels of mobility. Dancers are usually very high mobility, like they can lift their leg all the way up. I don't know that I can do it. I can't do that. So, like, also honor how much mobility your body has, but that is very important to increase because all of this has elements of mobility, like no matter what you're doing. Even like with brass players, it's about neck mobility and where your shoulders are, and so mobility is huge in music. Yeah. It's a very dramatized picture, but that's actually from an Alexander Technique workbook. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Alexander Technique. It is a like musicians kind of meditation meets movement sort of thing. And it's like a lot about active sitting and standing and posture and all of that. So that picture is actually something that I learned earlier this year that made me quite upset because like when we sit on the edge of our chairs, as at least cellists, we usually have like a certain amount of curve in our back. And that is actually hyperextension. You are not sitting straight. You are not sitting straight up. And it was actually causing me shoulder pain, which I didn't realize. So like by moving your pelvis back and you're like bracing your abs more, your spine is like your back is less likely to hurt. And so I did that. But also that brings me to the point that like technique is hugely important. If you are getting injured 98% of the time, it is not just because you practice too much, it's because some part of your technique is not perfect. And most people do not have perfect technique, and that is okay. But it is something to constantly work on, because wherever you are holding tension is automatically the most likely to be injured. So if you use a lot of power in your bow arm, then like this muscle right here is going to be extremely tense. If you squeeze with your thumb, you are likely to have wrist problems. If you like tense, if you shrug your shoulder, like if you tense up your shoulders too much when you're playing, then you're likely to develop shoulder problems. So tension is the enemy at all times. And your technique work should always be based on the idea of not having tension. So strength training is recommended for everyone. Like, no matter how much you're practicing, strength training is important. If you've ever been injured before, it is absolutely essential, because that is the only way that you ever like fully recover is by building up the muscles around whatever tendon, ligament, nerve you have injured, because it has been strained too much by itself, so now it needs help. Strength training comes in a lot of forms, though. So like, personally, I love weightlifting. Like Sophia knows, I force her to go to the gym with me every morning. But
7 a.m. wake up 5 days a week, baby.
So I love weightlifting. Not everyone does. It is hard. If you don't know how to do it, it is even harder, and you can hurt yourself that way. So if you are interested in weightlifting and don't know how to do it, 2 of our own rookies run the weightlifting club. So like, Saturdays at 9, we go lift weights with Duncan and Amelia.
Follow bodybuilding Instagram.
Yeah, they will help you learn how to use all of the things. If you don't have that time available and you want to wake up as early as I do, then I'm more than happy to teach you how to use weights. I go to the gym at 7 every morning. I'm also willing to find other time, but I will totally teach you. Other strength training involves HIIT, which is high intensity interval training, and that involves like, if you, for some weird reason, like burpees, there's a lot of that. Push-ups, it's a lot of body weight exercise. It includes cardio too. Did a lot of that last year. Not really my thing, but it is helpful. Pilates is strength building. Martial arts. If you do asana yoga, it's strength building. Dance, rock climbing. Like there's all sorts of ways to build strength that don't have to be in weight room. So if that's not your thing, then try others and hopefully you'll find something you like. It also improves your endurance. It makes things easier. Like I totally didn't understand at all that while I was weightlifting, it would make playing the cello easier because like that's less pressure. I have more muscle and I have to exert less effort onto my instrument, which means that I'm having less tension. And then there's SMR and rest. The less you do any of those other things, the more you have to rest. So if you don't want to strength train, if you're not really working on your technique, if you're not doing any of that, you're gonna have to take extended periods of time off. And that is okay, but I strongly encourage trying other things. SMR is like an active breathing through like all sorts of different ways. So, like, I have a whole kit.
Yes, it's a bit home gym.
Yeah, my tiny little home gym that would give me a functional position. So, like, I have a foam roller, which is very fun. I have lots of sources for like how to use this, but you can put it under your back, under your legs, why on your side, which I think is painful. You can roll out those muscles and it makes them less tense. It's best before you go to bed. That way you can fully recover by the next day. Tennis balls. I keep one of those in my extra locker. Because you can just sit there and like put it on your own shoulder. So you can lay on a tennis ball as well versus a foam roller. It's better for smaller areas. I hold a lot of tension right in my chest. So like by just using the pressure of the tennis ball, like right on whatever muscle is giving you pain, or just feels a little too tight that day, that really helps. I also have like other shaped things that are the same as tennis balls. So like this one is also a finger kick device, so you can understand it that way. But yeah, there's all sorts of things you can use. You don't need to have the whole home gym to do it. If you want a tennis ball and you don't want to pay for it, there's like a million for a tennis court. Never pick it. So yeah, but SMR is also really important for recovery. All right. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of like just a mobility workout. And workout is like a strong term. So don't worry. We're just going to go through like mobility workout one. So if you like want to come down to the floor. Make it small. Yes.
Like the year before I was here, this book on tour got injured. And that happens all the time.
It happens all the time. There are two people that I know that just right now that freaking actually turn off because it's going to get worse over tour, but it's going to get really bad over here. 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. 4 days a week. And then we're going on 11-day tour because we have good tour. So I would also like to mention real quick that Sma is one of the most forgiving professors that you will find have injuries. If you need to take the concert off, this isn't even a big deal. It is encouraged.
Just please tell him, not just tell him before the day.
You don't have, like, if you thought you were fine in the morning, you no longer feel fine, but like, I can't do this concert. And he will say, okay. And that was the end of that. Like, when I told him I had to take 2 weeks off and 2 Christmas Fest performances, he gave me a hug and said, I hope you feel better. So he is one of the best professors talking about that. Some professors are not so very tough to talk about. It's not one of that. So if you're really bad on tour, please tell them. Or at least sexually offended, you are not doing.
Why don't we come up with this work feedback form that could be a way to?
Yes.
That's a good idea.
Or the NDSC feedback form. Representative. I would be happy to talk to you, talk to a prof on behalf of food. Oh.
So this is my really workout one. This one I usually do in the mornings. I do full workouts. And the first thing is like hip mobility, and it's full body mobility, which I thought was kind of dumb. Like I'm only using my arms, but it's also it turns out to be exceedingly helpful because the more motion you have in all of your body, the less tension you have. So for this one, like keep your legs slightly bent, you don't want your knees, but never you are keeping your legs straight and bend like over at the waist. However far you can go is however far you can go.
It's like resting on your head.
Are we keeping our back straight?
Yeah.
With the
Keep
camera.
your back straight.
Okay.
And
Oh my.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
And then
Okay.
You get a lot of applause. After you suck it off.
I hope they enjoy watching this.
It just sounded like this is going to be Someone just walks in on that.
you want to look really see the arms.
We should have put this in a small center. I don't have it in mind, but I think I believe Owen is the keeper.
Where is he?
No.
Wait, where can I watch this back?
Oh, we have a YouTube channel?
Oh, it's center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check it out.
Thanks, Haley. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Oh, that's fine.
Yes, so this is cat. This is like if you ever. So I usually ask them brace your abs. So and then front stomach muscles if you don't have it.
We're with Wednesday, so. Did you miss the TikTok?
Yeah, so then like look up and then like move, like think about your shoulder and your butt like going right, and then yeah, just do that. previous step. From here, you're going to see this position kind of switch it from go back. Take what hard goes through and then
Head straight to
on its side. I mean, just if it's comfortable for you. Next thing is shoulder fronts. So,
yes.
and so move your shoulders up, forward, down, and back.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've never felt your shoulder blades move separately before, this is a great exercise.
Yeah. As a trumpet player, that's where all my tension is. Oh.
Yeah, the function when you start is
When you're back up.
Is that a spin?
no. Functional.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So now you're up and you do it in reverse. So go down. Ooh. Go forward. Go up. And go back. And then do that 2 more times.
It's also this like expert move what Anthony makes the modern people do.
That's true. Wow.
Ooh.
All right. Next thing we do is like another shoulder press. So for this one, your hands are never going to be in an unnatural position. So you start at the top, and then you go down and push back, and then you'll go back. Then you do this 10 minutes. If you're like me, your shoulders pop every single time. My shoulders pop every single time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that a cellist?
I don't know, but it might be. I do find this one like the most helpful.
Every time I do like bicycles, my knees like crack.
Yeah.
Incessantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like every time.
Crunchy. I have to tell her like that is actually not bad unless it hurts. Like
I sure hope not.
because a lot of people get concerned about, oh, I don't want to do that with someone's knees crack. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I think it's all the time, and they're still on my hands. So my knees are probably just.
And then you're out. Hand seated comes up. And then you're just going to tilt. Sorry.
Oh. All the way to my shoulders.
No, but there's a tendon.
Then is that? Well, the dumb question.
No, it's likely your bicep.
No, like what's it?
Oh, sorry, that's like collagen, which is like a certain cell of your body that connects muscles to muscles. So like there's tendons and ligaments that muscles to and
It connects tissues.
Okay, just make sure I don't fall apart.
wait, what connects bone and bone? Muscles. Oh, bones are not connected.
There's little features that live inside of us.
Oh,
Oh,
each
each
bone
bone, a perfect balance.
So like, that's essentially so like at your elbow, it holds like there's a little disc of cartilage and then there's a little disc of cartilage.
It's with liquid.
Stop it.
And air.
The last part is so tilt your head to the side and let it go down.
Flashbacks are first significant.
And do not go all the way down.
Whoa. Okay, that flashback.
Is that
You should have told me.
it's not terrible for
So that's how it's extended.
yes.
Really?
It's because your spine, instead of doing this, is doing this.
Can you bring your head back to neutral instead of going all the way back? As just a point from the circle.
I mean, you can, but I mean, at that point, you're not doing really well. You're just kind of like, yeah, so that is a really, really helpful one. And now I have this on PowerPoint. I don't know if there are any other beginning or grass players here.
There are not.
Okay.
It's not great.
Ah, yes. So, like, this is kind of like veering off of what Scott says. So, like, when people get things perfect, he goes, ah, yes, this is the professional standard. Well, another part of that professional standard is constantly being proud of perfection and what we see as perfection. And so, if you've heard any of these things or said any of these things in your life, then I would like you to, like, don't feel bad about it. Like feel that it is, like, just start wondering why you're proud. So, like, I don't yet today, I could be really proud of that. And it's like 5 p.m. Or I'm working until midnight tonight. I've been in the music building until classes every day, practice 8 hours a day. I never take a day off, or I don't really have time. I've said some of these. I'm still bad about saying some of these. And it's not okay. As a music world, we need to start working on that, because for every person that knows that you're exaggerating, there's someone else who doesn't think you are. And I have also been that person. When someone says they practice 8 hours a day, I'm a musician, I'm competitive, I want to do more. And then it got to the point that when someone said, I haven't eaten yet today, I felt bad about eating. Someone said I haven't slept in a while, I felt bad about sleeping. I know I'm not the only one.
Don't ever feel bad for eating something.
Yes. So there will also be professors, there will be coworkers, there will be peers that make you feel bad for taking care of yourself. It is incredibly hard to not let them do that. So if you need to take time off, take it. Regardless of what people think of you, regardless of what you are told, no matter how essential whatever you have to do is that day, you are more essential. And I don't pretend to think that's easy, because when I went into Smel's office 2 years ago to tell him that I couldn't play for 2 weeks, I was shaking. I was so scared. And it's Small. He's not like a terrifying person. But also, when I told my piano professor that I couldn't play an octave because I literally couldn't move my wrist like that, she still made me do it. I failed piano one because my hand didn't have the ability to play notes. So some people will be understanding and a lot won't. So I think one of the hardest parts of your wellness journey will be being okay with it. Accepting that it is okay to take breaks. That even if it isn't your best day and you feel super exhausted, it's okay to take it off. That, like, it's okay to not be okay. Let's treat it. Okay.
And that is also something that part of our mission, synergy, kind of normalizing this culture. If you ever need to, like, of course, take a day out to go to rehearsal, absolutely understandable. Also, if you could reach out to other people, Grace and I, or other people within the group, if you need support or anything like that.
Yes, like I don't pretend to be a professional, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm always willing to listen. If you need advice, I will try my best, or I will point you in the direction of someone that knows better. So, like, I know that I'm always open to that. I would assume that, like, Sam and Grace are probably always open to that.
Absolutely.
There are people that are there for you, and you are not alone. If you are experiencing pain, if you are super stressed out, you are so not alone. There are so many people, and it's kind of sad how few of us want to talk about it, but I feel like it's kind of a universal experience. And I want to change that, but
if there's anything that, like, within rehearsals that's making you stressed out or feel pain, let us know.
And also, like, I wanted to give him a full, like, plug in this program. This is Austin Heffner. He is a doctorate in trombone performance right now at IU, and he has created an entire program that's exclusively for, like, helping musicians recover from injury cycles. He's worked with all sorts of different types of instruments, and all of them have had a high success rate. The program is not the cheapest. It's cheaper than a lifetime of physical therapy. I will say that. But if you are not in that financial place right now, that is totally understandable. Go follow him on Instagram anyway. You can DM him with questions, he will respond. He also has posted a good deal of his mobility workouts online without even having to take the program. And he has his own website. If you want to look into it more, he's always happy to talk to people. So physical therapy gave birth. He comes to campus. He is like one of my favorite people. He really kind of saved my life there in the beginning. He's the only physical therapist I've ever worked with that was super effective, and he has worked with a lot of skilled musicians. So he's a good person to talk to. He comes to campus, he has his practice in Faribault, and you will call their office and you'll be able to schedule that.
Is that for?
No.
Oh.
It is not, but he takes most forms of insurance, not mine, but most forms of insurance, and it's not that. It's not very. And then there's Jonathan Reynolds, who is a little more expensive, but if you have specific, like, hand problems or stuff like that, he's a physical therapist for the Minnesota Orchestra, so he is very well versed in musicians. He knows what to do. A lot of physical therapists have to, like, sometimes give bad advice for musicians because they don't understand what it really means. I had a friend that did a home surgery because it was, and not their permission for 3 months with carpal syndrome came back within a year in both wrists. And now physical therapy is extremely more difficult. So if you have someone that is advising high-level pain medication, surgery, or just using biofreeze as a quick fix, you should probably find someone else. So if you're beginning training, I have a couple of Instagrams for weights, people that do a lot of sustainable weightlifting. One of them is competitive, but she still posts lots of videos on how to use equipment, and I think that's very helpful. Yoga, that site, you can go to that website And it'll have a whole questionnaire on who you are and what you're looking for in the campus. And then they'll give you exercises recommended based on that. It's free. For getting your dance, personally, I find like all of mine on Pinterest. Just look it up, there's plenty. But there's also quite a few like specified for men and women. It's like pretty biology, which one you do these muscles work differently for certain exercises. So resources to help that. There's also campus resources, which no one knows about, and I'm a little frustrated about that. But
Yeah.
Dr. Amanda Owens went really like 7 pages of site on musician wellness that absolutely no one knows about. And it has physical therapists, it has workouts, it has health resources, it has kind of everything. And yeah, it does exist. So I put a link to that. Dr. Amanda Owens herself is also a resource. She is very qualified in these laws. St. Fitness and Bodybuilding Club. So it's really low pressure. If you've never looked at weights before, that's okay. Bodybuilding is a strong term. Like you just have to all get together and have a good time and like do what you can, and people are helpful and encouraging. It's a good atmosphere to learn. It's fun to like enjoy it and do. Yes, Dr. Amanda specializes in musician wellness. You know her, she's a little hard to get in touch with, but she will like respond.
If all else fails, stop her in person.
Yeah. And then Dr. Anthony Roberts, he's in the dance department. He's a specialist in a number of forms of movement. He does Pilates and yoga and dance, and like he meditates a lot, and he's very much about nutrition. He will be so much more than happy to talk to you.
He's very understanding.
He is.
And will come and will hold like no judgment. If you are in pain or struggling physically and you go to him for help, he will find a way out.
He takes good care of his dancers who also suffer from a lot of performance injuries. He's very understanding. Like I had to also take time off of work as a dance accompanist for him in freshman year, and every week from an hour, he stopped me in the hall and asked me how I was doing. Just like, I've never had a class with this man, but he's wonderful. So if you need someone to talk to, those are the messages. In terms of mental health, if you've had bad experiences with Bill House, I did it. Personally, my therapist is in Bill House, and Bill is amazing. The rest of them I really can't vouch for. I don't know. I've heard good things, I've heard bad things, but I would vouch for her. There's also psychology.com. You go out there and look for people that specialize in whatever you are struggling with. You can do it online, you can do it in person, you can look up your area, you can show just whatever. It will help you connect to someone.
And the app 24/7.
Timely care?
Timely care, yeah. That's
Yeah.
also a great resource.
That's true. I've had some bad experiences with that app.
Oh.
But
And also there's a limited number of appointments that you have access to. I think 12.
that's true, but that's less limited than Morehouse.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like they have very limited availability. So if you need to talk to someone immediately, you should probably have time for that.
Yeah.
I also found that most of the counselors on there are specifically Christian counseling. So
Do with that what you will.
Okay.
But yeah, there's resources out there, and there are people around that know other resources that I don't. So like, if you want to ask around, you can do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. We are not meeting next Sunday.
Well, that's really
Yes.
nice.
We care about you.
It's in the middle of
Yes, I know. That's why we don't have it. Even if we didn't have a festival, so we wouldn't be, because you all were working single breaks. I hope that you all have fantastic breaks, and you're able to take some rest mentally and physically. And yeah, I can get here. The physical mind, which I have to fail in most classes.